Hey everybody, Alan Cox here. What do you have in place today that would prevent someone from accidentally sending sensitive information outside of your organization? I say accidentally, but even maliciously or intentional. Well, today I want to talk about a topic that is very common. We hear about it all the time, and that is data loss prevention, or DLP, inside of Microsoft Purview. I don't think our video will be very long today because I really want to just kind of get to the basics. I see a lot of organizations, and a lot of organizations have no DLP policy set up, or just some of the basic default policies that are set up. And I think this is a very critical component to your overall data compliance and governance posture, DLP policies. So today I want to talk about that. That's going to be our focus as we dive into this. And in the future, we'll probably layer on top of this a little bit, add some additional advanced configurations and some adaptive stuff. But today I just want to get to the basics. So that's going to be our topic today. Data loss prevention inside of Microsoft Purview. Let's get started. All right, here we are in Microsoft Purview, and so we just get there by going to purview.microsoft.com, and there we are. You can also get there through the Admin Center if you go through admin.cloud.microsoft or admin.microsoft.com, go to Microsoft Purview. It takes you to the exact same place, so there we go, and that's where we'll get started. So from in here, inside Purview, we've got these solutions, and we click on solutions and we go down to data loss prevention. That's what we're talking about. So we go to data loss prevention, and there's a lot of information in here. We're not really going to dive into it too much, but it gives us some recommendations about DLP policy and some policy improvement and how we can do some of that stuff. And we can, of course, yes or no, we like this, good or bad. But we're going to get right to it, so we're going to go to a policy. We're going to create a new policy. What we're going to do, our scenario is, we're just going to create a pretty simple policy that says if a file, we're going to target OneDrive in this case, if a file has DLP, or rather has a sensitive information type of a, say, credit card or social security number, or we're going to use Patriot Act here. That's a built-in template, if you will, to target sensitive information. So then we're going to essentially prevent the external sharing of that type of data. Okay, so we're going to go to policies here, and I'm just going to create a new policy. And I'm going to do enterprise applications and devices. And so we're just going to click that, and we're going to go here. And I'm going to go any number of things, but I can do financial. And I can say, based on the United States here, if I want to narrow this down, and so then we'll do financial, and I'm going to do, well, let's do financial data, I actually like that. And I may add to that, I may modify it. Okay, yeah. Let's just use financial data here, but I may add to this here in a minute. So that's good. So we're going to go next here. And now what I like to do is I like to have my policy tell me, what it's targeting, what work stream, Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, and what it does. So, for example, this policy, I might say this is a Contoso, it's a DLP, OneDrive for Business, external share block, and then OneDrive for Business, external share block. I think that's probably about all we know. Oh, what it was. And you can do this in any order; it doesn't really matter. In this case, we're going to say financial data, and we can get specific in the descriptions if we want, and it kind of does that a little bit. So something along that line. That just tells me what it is, OneDrive for Business. At a glance, I know what that policy does. I don't have to go into it. That's just kind of just my own little thing that I do. So whatever works for you. So we're going to skip admin units. I'm not going to get into those just yet at this time. And we're going to go into this policy. Now this policy, again, I believe you should have a policy that targets specific work streams. Don't have a policy that targets Exchange and SharePoint and OneDrive accounts and all of this when you're doing a DLP policy. Because if you need to adjust that one policy, you don't want to have to adjust for everything. So I'm targeting OneDrive accounts. I could exclude accounts here if I want to. So I can edit the scope of these accounts, specific users or exclude users. So I'm going to go next here. And then from here, I'm going to change this because I do want to add something to it. And I could have done like Patriot Act or something like that, some other policy. But I'm going to change this, and we have here, we create a completely new rule if we want, but it builds two new rules for us. One is it's called a low-high or high-low. But basically, if we have a single instance up to 9, it's going to do X, right? And so, and then we'll talk about that. So I do want to add a sensitive type. And by the way, I can add labels in here and retention labels. There's a lot I can do here. But I'm just going to add another sensitive type. And the sensitive type, I'm just going to add SSN. Hit enter. U.S. Social Security number. So I just added that type in there as well. And so we have low volume. So let's make sure that we have all of these in here. I may have actually got rid of the other ones. Usually it'll just keep them with it, but I'm going to go ahead. Sensitive info types. Yeah, it did. So we're going to do that. I'm going to do Social Security numbers. And I'll do credit card numbers. We're going to add those. So we got Social Security numbers, credit card, and ABA routing number. I don't know. We can add other things. We can driver's license, whatever. But there we go. This is actually a one to any. It's interesting. So this is normally it's a 1 to 9, but it changed that notice. So we're going to make some changes here in a second. But in any case. And so any of this, so what qualifies it? What's the condition? Any of these SITs, sensitive information types, and it's shared externally, then what? What are we going to do? We're going to take an action and we're going to block access to people outside the organization. That's it. Then we're going to do any kind of notifications that we want to do here. We can give them policy tips. We can notify admins, we can notify additional users. There's a lot of notification options here. Feel free to just kind of look through these and see what might work for you. It can be a little chatty, so I'm really just specific about who I want it to report to and what I might want that what I might want that to report. And so we're good there. I'm going to go ahead and save this. So it's interesting because I'm going to go ahead and look at this one again. It's 1 to any now, and there's some reporting there. So technically speaking, if we go into this one, this is 10 to any. They're sort of redundant in this case. I'm generally one that doesn't like the high-low. There are different actions or different notifications that occur depending on what it is. But honestly, both of these are pretty similar. I'm just going to get rid of this particular policy in this case, because really when we look at this policy, it's covering Social Security numbers, credit card, single instance up to any, so not 1 to 9 and then 10 to any. It's all of them. And then the action is block anytime it tries to share outside the organizations, and then the notifications you get here. Policy tip, customize that policy tip. We can allow overrides for the user if we want, and justification. So if they say, yeah, I need to send this external file that contains credit card numbers, and here's why, we have this sort of electronic trail of that. Send alerts to admins when a rule match occurs. Uses, this is the level of importance, okay? And so every time, but we can send an alert when a rule match activities threshold, for example. If you get more than 15 match activities, send an alert, right? So you don't have to send it every single time it happens, but maybe you want to, right? So you have to kind of evaluate these alerts that you want here. So I'm going to just save that now. We're good. Well, I'm going to go next. And now we could run this policy in simulation mode. Basically, it's going to, if I check this, it's going to show policy tips. So it's going to show the user, hey, this is a sensitive information. It's not going to block it at this point. It's going to simulate, and it's going to log things. That's not a bad idea when you're doing DLP and rolling that out. But if the policy will be automatically turned on if it's not editing within first 15 days. So if you forget to turn it on, it will automatically turn on after 15 days. I'm just going to go ahead and turn the policy on. The policy will be turned on and will begin enforcing changes once applied to the location. We're going to click next here, and that's it. We're going to submit. And this will take just a second to submit. By the way, right here, before we have submitted, we could have updated the locations if we wanted and change where this DLP policy is going to apply. But again, I like to apply a policy just to each work stream. So SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, Exchange Online. So we can go into this, make sure it's deleted when it's no longer needed. Okay, it's talking about retention policies. Just giving you some recommendations. We're going to click done here. We're done. Now what it's going to do is it's going to start syncing. And what it's syncing is it's telling OneDrive for Business. In this case, it's telling it, here's a new policy, and it's going to start scanning the information there. So I'm going to pause for a second, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause. I'm going to let this sync up. We'll try it to see if it actually works. It does sometimes take a while for the policies to actually do what we've asked them to do, block. So we may not see that, but we're going to give it a go. So I'm going to pause for just a second, and we'll come back on the other side when this sync is done. It usually doesn't take very long, so we'll see you shortly.
All right, now we are back, and we can see that this DLP policy that we created, and just by the way, as I mentioned before, at a glance, we can see that this is a, Contoso DLP. It's for OneDrive for Business. It's to block external sharing for financial data. We can go in and we can put more specifics in there. The mode is on. It's not in simulation. It's actually active, and the sync is completed. And so this synced out to the work streams that we were doing this DLP policy for, in this case, OneDrive for Business. If it was related to Exchange and SharePoint, Teams, and all of that, it would sync the DLP out there. Now, it did take a little bit of time. So as a general rule, we like to allow about 24 hours for all of the dust to settle before we know that this is really going to be go live. And so really at this point, this is pretty much done here. We've created this policy. It is set. And so now that this sync is completed, I'm going to go into, as an example, I will go into, we'll just say, let's just go into OneDrive here, and I'm just going to grab this PII file here. Now this just has a Social Security number on this. Now let me just open this. I'm just going to open this and show that I do in fact have access to this file. And we also, just so we didn't have a conflict here, I did downgrade the label for this because I do have an auto labeling policy. So I downgraded the label so it's public, which means the labeling won't get in the way of the DLP policy. It is basically considered it completely safe, right, for external sharing. But of course, DLP policy will say otherwise. So here's our column that we're really most interested in here, and that is our Social Security numbers. But no other thing here is blocking us and preventing us from doing anything with this file. So at this point, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to right click here. We're going to go in and we're just going to share this like we might do any other file. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, let's see if we got an external, an external address. Now, this item contains sensitive information. It can't be shared with people outside the organization. Here's the policy tip. Remember, we could have customized this. The item is shared with people outside the organization, and it contains sensitive information. Of course, in this case, Social Security number. And so right away, we're completely blocked from sharing this file. And so that is essentially how DLP policies work. Now we can go in and of course, if we look at overview and we can look at this policy, maybe sign in again, and again, we'll just see if it kind of gives me any information here. I'm just curious to see what's kind of loaded. So we have some current matches here. We talked about this in the first part of the video, so won't go back over this again. But basically, that is how our DLP policies that's how our DLP policies work. That's a pretty basic setup. At some point, we'll dive into more logging, more tracking hits, things like that. But this was just a very simple setup of DLP policy to get you started. And so anyway, I hope this has been helpful, and thank you for watching.